Hello, dear students. Welcome to part 14 of a 22-part series of tutorials in managed database system using Microsoft Access and SQL. In this presentation, we are going to be looking at how to create queries in Design View. My name is MemJM, or you can simply call me Emily Swap. When we speak about a query refers to the action. It refers to the action of instructing the database to run some or all of the data in your database. That is, you are querying or asking the database to give you a certain response to a certain question that you want to ask. And therefore, when we speak about making use of queries in Microsoft Access database, we are simply saying that we want to take an action, instructing the database to do some activity and give us some feedback. That is, you are querying the database for some data that matches a given criteria that you have set. The queries are run against one or more tables to return only the data that we're interested in. And therefore, you should always ensure that the tables from where you are going to generate your query from contain adequate data before you can create a query. And therefore, a query in Microsoft Access is a database object used to retrieve, filter, calculate, or update data from one or more tables or from other queries. It acts as a request for specific information and presents results in a data sheet, similar to a table, but usually more focused. You can also use them as a source of records for forms and reports. Therefore, my dear students and the rest of the learners, it is important to note that before you create a query for a database, your database must always have or contain data. And this data is the data that is usually keyed into various tables in your database. For you to be able, therefore, to proceed and create queries for your database, you are expected to ensure that your database contains data, and also that the tables that contain the data have the required relationships. And for that reason, before you commence the process of creating queries, or even before we execute the database queries in this presentation, you should ensure that you have known how to create tables and that you have created relationships, including primary keys, and that can be learned from the presentations. That is from presentation number 1, or part 1 of 22, to part 13 of 22 in this series. For this reason, it is advisable that before you proceed with this presentation, you ensure that you have gone through the presentations that are already posted in Emily Swap ICT YouTube channel to be able to follow or create a database that contains the required tables and the required data. Some types of queries that you can create in your database include the select query, the insert query, update query, and delete query, amongst others. Therefore, queries are used to perform the following activities. Number 1, you can use a query to retrieve data of interest. That is, you can use a query to find specific records or data from your database. For example, students who have been enrolled in a course or in a program such as ICT diploma. Secondly, we use queries to do what we call the data filtering. That is, displaying only the records that meet certain criteria or criteria of interest. Number 3, you can use queries to perform data calculation. That is, you can create what we call a calculated field, which in real sense is not a field that is stored in any of the tables, but it is a field that is generated dynamically to hold certain data, which is as a result of the data that is stored in more than one field in a single table or from various tables, including the query. For example, you can create a dynamic field called total fees, whose results on data is the product of the data stored in a field called units and the data stored in another field called cost. The unit field and the cost field might be in the same table, in different tables, or even from existing queries. Number 4, we use queries to do what we call the data summarization or to summarize data, which means you can use a query to group data and also count data. For example, the number of students per course. Number 5, we use queries to do what we call the data modification or to modify data by executing activities such as updating the data, deleting the data from your database or from a table, as well as inserting new records in a table or in bulk. Number 6, we use queries for data analysis. This simply means that you can use a query to extract patterns and insights to support decision making. And therefore, it is important for you to note that the queries help us in doing a number of activities. For example, we use the queries in choosing fields, choosing records that meet certain criteria, in sorting records, in performing calculations, as well as performing other activities like displaying data of interest. Therefore, the use of queries has a number of advantages to the users. Some of these main advantages include the following. Number 1 is flexibility. You can be able to combine data from multiple tables. Number 2 is efficiency. You can quickly find and process specific data from your database. Queries has also an advantage of what we call automation of the database. You can be able to reuse your data that is existing in a table. So you do not have to repeat searches manually. You can simply set a query and you can always reuse it as often as you want without the need to repeat creating or process of creating the query. Number 4, you can always use the queries to do data analysis, and therefore, data analysis is an advantage of queries. It allows you to group your data, sort your data, and also perform various calculations. Another advantage is that with the use of queries, you can ensure that the bulk updates or deletions follow the required rules and relationships. And that is what we call ensuring data integrity. So how do you create a query in Design View? To create a query in Design View, you do it as follows. Number 1, you click on the Create tab. But before you do this activity, you must ensure that your database is already open and also it contains the required tables and the required data. Secondly, you click on Query Design in the Queries group. Number 3, you select the table that you would like to base your query on. Then number 4, you click on Add. Number 5, you repeat steps 3 and step 4 until all the tables are added. That is, you continuously select the table that you would like to base your query on, and then you click Add. So you click on the name of the table, you click Add. You click on the name of the table, you click Add. You click on the name of the table, and you click Add, and you continue that way until all the tables that contain the required fields have been added on the displayed window. Number 6, you close the Show Table window. Once you have done that, all the tables that you have selected that you have added will now be displayed in the upper part of the Query Design screen by boxes containing the tables fields. Number 7, you double-click on the field names in the field list window, which you would like to include in the query. If you want to create a calculated field, which is not included in the existing tables, especially one for holding results, generated through computation of data from other fields, you can write it in the form of an expression. So how do we write expressions in queries that have been created in Microsoft Access? This is what you do. If, for example, you want to create a query called query total paid for computing the total fees paid by each student, you can do it as follows. Number one, you click on add, or you add the following tables. The table called payments and the table called students. The table called students will contain the fields that give details about the student, while the payments table will contain the fields that have description about the payments that have been made. Once you've added those two tables on your window, then you ensure that you have activated the show. So you show the student ID, the first name, last name, and amount. If you don't select the show option, or don't check the check boxes for show, you'll not be able to see the fields, even in your query. Once you've done that, you add a calculated field called, for example, total paid, by typing the following expression on the amount paid field. So this is how you generate or you do computations in your database. You click or you type a field called total paid, and then you choose the amount paid field. Once you've done that, you have typed the name total paid, and you have selected the amount paid field. You click on summation tools icon, and then you choose sum and the total row below amount paid field. This is how the results for this query, for example, for our database will look like. You can see you have the student ID, the first name, last name, and the total field. So it simply means that for each student, all the amount that he or she has paid will be combined together, and it will be displayed under a new field called total paid. Note that total paid field is not an existing field in any of the two tables. It is not in the paid payments table, neither is it in the student details table. It is a field that has been generated by the query for the purposes of holding the total payments made by the student. And therefore, this data, which is stored in this field, can always change if there's any change in the payments table. So how do we create this query in our database? This is what you do, my dear students and the rest of the learners. What I want us to do is I want to demonstrate how you can create a query in design view, and this query contains what we call the calculated field that I've already explained. So number one, you click or you launch our database or your database. So let me open our Access database. So from the Start menu, you click on Access Software, that is Microsoft Access. And then you select your database. My database is called MLSwap School. So this is our database. From there, you click on Create. Once you click on Create, you look or you choose Query in Design View or Query Design this way. This is our icon for creating a query in Design View. So you click on Query Design. Once you have done that, you will see the Show Table dialog box, like this one. This dialog box contains all our tables. You can see it has the courses table, the departments table, enrollments table, payments table, programs table, and the students table. What you need to note is that you don't add all these tables in your window for the query. You only add the tables that contains the fields of interest, and then you leave the others. So in our case, we are going to only add 2 tables. These tables are the payments table and the students table. So I'll begin with the students table. So you click on students table, then you click add. Then you click on the payments and you click add. Remember that the tables that you add in your query window depends on the fields or the type of data that you want to generate. In my case, I am adding students table and the payments table because what I simply need is to create a query which is for computing the amount that each student has paid, that is the total paid, and display it on the screen. And for that reason, you just add the 2 and then you click on close. So these are our 2 tables. From there, for you to be able to add the fields of interest in your design, you click on the field of interest like this one. So you can click on, for example, student ID. You press your mouse button down on it and you drag it in this row here that reads field. You can see that once you have dragged and dropped your field, it also follows, or it is followed by the name of the table from where the field has come from. We also want to have the other field called first name. So you can click on the next column on our design window, and then you can do the same. You can click, you press down your mouse button down and drop, or you can just double click, and that is faster. You can see I've added first name. I also want to add last name. So you can just double click on last name and it will be automatically added in our grid. The next field that we want to add is the one for payments. So you can click on amount paid or just double click on amount paid. You can see that's where we are. From there, because we don't want to display or we want to do some computation, we can give it a name, or we can type a new name for the field that we want to display, and our field is total paid. So I'll type total paid, and then you put a colon that way, then put or enclose amount paid in square brackets by typing it this way. Once you have done that, remember, if I run this query as it is going to give us data. But if a student, for example, has made payments using different modes, that data or the amount the person has paid will not be computed together. Let's see. If I want to view the results of this query, you just need to click on run. So let's click on run and see the kind of results we are going to get. So you just look on this symbol that looks like an exclamation mark, and then you click it. If you look carefully, my dear students and the rest of the learners, after running this query that way, you realize that there is repetition. For example, Jane here, Jerry has her payments displayed twice or repeated twice because this student has used 2 different modes to make the payment. So the query is displaying Jane Jerry as if there are 2 students, and therefore the amount paid has not been computed together. And therefore, for us to be able to compute the results or the total amount paid by the candidate or the student, you need click again on view, then you can click on assign view. So what we are going to do here, if you want the amount that the student has paid using different modes to be combined together, you click on this uh, total field or total paid field, and then you look for the summation symbol. Here it is. This is the summation symbol. So you click on the summation symbol that way. You can see a new row has been added by the name total. As you can see, this row here has been added, and you can see that below each field, there is group by here, there's group by, there's group by. So what you do next is, once you have clicked on the summation tool, you click on the field in which you want to do the computation. So you just click there, group by, then there's this button which will appear here. So you click on this button, and then you select the function that we want to use. We want to compute the sum paid by the candidate and therefore by the student. So what we need to do is we are going to select sum. If you want to do the average, you would have chosen AVG. If you wanted to choose minimum, maximum, the same. So my interest is sum. We want to compute the amount paid. So you select sum. Then you can click on run again. So if I click on run, you can now see that there's no any further repetitions. The amount paid by our candidates has been combined. Look, for example, at Jane Jerry. Jane Jerry, now the amount, the total paid is, you can see, it is 30,000. So we have been able to combine the total that each student has paid. So Jane Jerry has now paid that 1,000, and the others have their own amounts. So this is how we create a query in the design view, and more so, even create a calculated field like total page. Once you've done that, it's always good for you to save the query so that the next time you want to perform a similar operation, you don't need to repeat again the process of creating the query. So let us save our query. So we click on save, and then we give our query a name. Our query is supposed to be called query, then total page. Once you do that, you click on OK. And then you can save it again. So my dear students and the rest of the learners, that is how you create a query in design view. Let us proceed and see how we can create another query. Let us also create another query called fees balance. Now, this query, or the purpose of this query, is to compute the amount of fees that each student owes the institution based on the data generated by the query for computing total fees paid. So if you want to create a query, for example, for computing the fees balance for each student, then you can be able to proceed as follows. So what we are going to do, we are going to maintain or to add. This time, we are going to add two tables. One table is called the students, and another table is called the programs. And we are also going to add a query that we have already generated called total paid query. So this demonstration is going to show you that you can be able to create a new query even using the fields or data that has been generated by another query. So for you to do this, you proceed after you've added the three tables or the two tables and the query, that is students table, programs table, and query total paid query. Next thing you need to do is to show the student ID, first name, last name, program fees, and total paid. So those are the fields that you need to add or to select from the various tables in the query so that you can be able to proceed and uh, run the query or create a calculated field and run the query. So once you've done that, you can add a calculated field called balance as follows. So you have the new field that you want to develop or to generate, or what I'm calling the dynamic field, which is not found in any other table or query. And our new field will be called balance. It is going to hold data, which is the difference between the data in the program fees field and the total paid. So the purpose of this query is to be able to check the amount of fees that a student owes the institution based on the cost of a program, or what we are calling the program fees, and the amount the candidate has paid. So the balance or the field called balance will hold the difference between the cost of the program and the amount that the student has paid for that program in that institution. Once you have created this field, using this expression, you save the query by clicking on the query one tab and giving it a name. Then you close it. Finally, you open the query in datasheet view to see the results by right-clicking on the query object and clicking on open to generate the needed information from the tables, or just click on run to run the query. This is how the results from our query is expected to look like. You can see I have my fields, the student ID, the first name, last name, then the program fees. Now the amount in this column for program fees is the exact amount, which is the cost for each program. Then we have the total paid. The total paid is a field which is generated dynamically. It is created dynamically, and we are going to pick it from the query that we have already generated. So the difference between the program fees and the total paid is what will be displayed under balance. As you can see, Jane Jerry has taken a program whose cost is 32,000. She has paid 30,000. The difference is 2,000. John Mwangi has paid 28,000, or the program that John Mwangi has taken cost 28,000, and he has paid 28,000, and therefore the difference is 0. So this means this student does not have any balance. And the same applies to all the others. Now the question is this: how do we proceed? How do we proceed to generate or to create such a query? So what you do is you take the following steps, which I've just demonstrated. So you proceed as follows. So we are going to go back to our database or open our database. So I'll just click on my database at the bottom here because it is already open. From there, you can proceed and create your query as follows. You click on create menu or create menu, then you click on query design. As usual, you select or you add the tables. as well as the query that contains the field, which you are going to use to generate your query. So we are going to click on the students table. We click on Add. Next is Programs table. We click on Add. And lastly, you click on the Queries tab under the Show table that way, and then you add the query which contains a field of interest. After that, once you are done, you click on Close. So we have added two tables and a query on our query window. From there, you proceed and select the required fields from each of the objects we have added. The first one is we are going to add student ID. So just double click on student ID, then first name, then last name. You can see as I double click, they are being added in our grid. Then from the programs, we are going to select program fees. From the query called total paid, we're interested with the total paid. So you double click on the total paid. Once we have done that, and we have clicked on show, you can see they are automatically checked. So we don't need to check again, because if you click or you remove the check box or you remove the check, it means that whatever that is contained in that field will not be displayed. So it's always important to click on show so that the fields or the data from the fields can be displayed. You can now proceed, or we can now proceed and create what we are calling the calculated field. So what you do, we are going to click on this cell, then we type balance. That will be the name of our new field. Then put full colon, then the square bracket that way, and we can double click. We can double click on the program fees. We can just double click on the program fees this way. If it does not accept, you just type it. So we can type program fees. And remember to type it exactly as it is. So let me type my name of the program fees exactly as it is. Program fees. Put the square bracket, then minus, put another square bracket this way. You can always adjust the grid to accommodate what you are typing. You just point on the edge, you press your mouse button down, and then you drag. So, minus which field? That is minus total page. So I'll type total page, and then our square bracket. It's important to note that you should always write your expression properly. Then, because I want the balance to be displayed, or that field to be displayed containing balances, I will click on this button here for show. Once you have done that, you can click on run to see whether our query will generate the fees balances. So you click on this button here for run. So let's click on run. Great. You can see we have now a new field. We have a new field, and our new field is called balance. This one. This one is the dynamic field from the query. Balance is our new field. So that is how we create a calculated query or a calculated field called balance. And you can see that our balances have been computed where Faith, Peter, and John have 0 balances, but Jane has a balance of 2,000, Alice 17,000, Brian 1,000, and we have Mercy 1,000. We can now save our query. And if you want to adjust your query so that the names are properly displayed, you can always click on an edge or point on an edge this way, and then you can drag your field that way. Click or point on the edge and drag it that way, but ensure the content is properly displayed. You don't hide any value or any figures. So I want to adjust mine this way. From there now, you can just click on save. Save this query. What is the name of our query? The name of our query is query fees balance. QRY query. That is QRY fees balances or fees balance. Then you click on OK. And then you click on save. To close the query that is open, you right click on the name of the query and you click on close. To come out of the database, once you are done with creating the queries, you click on file and then you click on exit if it is available. But if it is not, like in our case here, you can click or you can go back and then you close or you click on the close button here, that way. And with that, my dear students and the rest of the learners, we have come to the end of part 14 of this series. You can continue to part 15 of 22, in which you are going to learn on how to create queries using Wizard. Congratulations, therefore, for learning part 14 of 22, in which we have learned about creating a query or creating queries in Design View in Microsoft Access. You can access the rest of the parts in the series, as well as other computer or ICT videos, by clicking or tapping on the Microsoft ICT YouTube channel below this video. To subscribe to the channel, tap on subscribe button below this video in YouTube if it's not currently reading as subscribed. Remember, you can also join this channel as a special subscriber who can be able to have an opportunity to interact with the content creator or the trainer of this series by clicking on join button and then following the prompts that will be displayed. For any further correspondence, kindly write to us through the email mlshop@gmail.com. Thank you very much for listening to me, and God bless.